So there's external brand purpose and there's also internal purpose. I'll use Southwest's original brand purpose, which was to democratize travel because the cost of flying was just too high. Did Southwest go out and tell the world that their brand purpose was to democratize travel? No. But internally, that's what everybody knew. The timing around purpose and sharing that purpose with employees and helping them to feel inspired, it's good business sense right now. If we're really wanting to engage employees and actually change behaviors, this isn't manipulative. This is just like really wanting to inspire them. We've got to get to their feelings, and their feelings are going to be more inspired by purpose than anything else.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Internal Marketing Podcast, the unique podcast series that flips the marketing conversation from external to internal by discussing everything you need to know about how to supercharge your marketing by engaging and empowering company employees to become powerful advocates of the company brand. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann, and I'm happy that you've chosen to join me for this episode where I'll be speaking with consultant and leadership and team coach, Deborah Mersino. And in this conversation, Deborah and I will be discussing how companies can engage their employees beyond just the company mission and vision, which are important, but how companies can engage employees in the company's purpose or its why. So you're going to want to stay tuned for this conversation. But first, if you're looking for more practical resources and powerful perspectives about building a great culture, then the Happy Monday Club is the place for you. Every Monday, the team over at Workshop puts together an awesome, inspiring, and uplifting list of articles from some of the world's best workplaces, along with their latest internal marketing and communication templates, and of course, the occasional giveaway or surprise. The Happy Monday Club newsletter is designed to help you create a positive, supported, impactful culture at any company size. Just over 10,000 culture-focused leaders are part of the Monday Club, so join them and sign up at happymondayclub.com. And of course, Workshop is the global sponsor of Season 2 of the Internal Marketing Podcast. Thank you, Workshop. Happy to have you on board. Now, without further ado, let's dive right into this discussion with Deborah. Deborah, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the Internal Marketing Podcast.
I am so delighted to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And I actually feel like, as we talked about just before, this is perfect time to be discussing this topic. And I actually feel like internal marketers are more important than ever before. And prior to working in organizational health, I spent 25 years in marketing. So I just feel a kinship with your audience. And I just feel like their role is so important today more than ever before. So I'm really excited to talk about this topic today.
All right. And I'm glad you're excited. I'm excited. I know our listeners are excited. So let's jump right in. And I like to always start our conversations with a level setting question, which is, let's start out by defining what do we say a company's purpose is or their why. So what is that and how does it differ from a company's mission and vision?
Mission and vision have been around for a long time. And the use of kind of a vision statement, I think it dates pretty far back, actually. I think Apple and Sony were really the first to use vision statements back in the 90s. And it really was the first time they used it as a strategic management tool, if you will. And that kind of spawned mission, vision, values, and even purpose. It's really when that was kind of the heyday of vision and mission statements. But really, Bain & Company, I just want to point this out. One of the interesting things that they did in the 2000s is they did a study and they discovered that a lot of executives and even employees were finding that there was some confusion around mission and vision. And I'm not bashing on mission and vision. They're going to be around for a long time. But sometimes if you go around and you ask someone, what's the mission of your company? Sometimes they're lengthy and not everyone can just recite it on the spot. But there's something about purpose that kind of gets right at the heart of things. It answers that all important question, which is why? Why do you exist? Why do you get up in the morning, right? Kerry-Ann, a lot of your listeners have probably seen Simon Sinek in his famous Golden Circle TED Talk about why and how important talking about why and how inspiring it is. And one of my favorites, Patrick Lencioni, talks about when we get to clarity, it's the first question in answering that clarity question, why do we exist? One thing that I think is really important is you kind of have to make some assumptions when you're answering the purpose question, because your purpose can't be to just make money, at least in my opinion. And I think Lencioni's opinion. Lencioni points out that when you're going to identify that purpose, you kind of have to accept the notion that your company exists for more than just to make money, but that you're existing to make people's lives better. All right. So he suggests that you ask the question, how are you making the world a better place? And once you answer that truthfully, if an executive team can answer that truthfully, then internal marketers can really rally around that and share that with the organization and get excited about it. It's really powerful. I would say that probably is the biggest difference. It differs in that it really gets to the heart.
Yeah. And I think that's an awesome point, because when we talk about internal marketing, one of the key things in recognizing what can make internal marketing successful is not just about that intellectual buy-in that you want your employees to have. You really want to get to the heart of emotional connection, because it's the emotional connection that really drives the behavior in good times, in bad times, when I'm having a rough day and these customers are in front of me driving me crazy. It's that emotional inner sense of purpose that's driving me and why I've chosen to be here representing this company that's going to keep me going.
Absolutely.
Some would argue, Deborah, that this probably sounds pretty intellectual, textbook mumbo jumbo. Do you believe that all companies need to have a purpose? I mean, why is it even important?
I think that is an excellent question. I would say that right now, the answer is absolutely yes, because particularly now, we are all feeling, I think to your point, we're all feeling a need for inspiration. And you can argue that it's textbook and that it's an intellectual exercise, but it's actually a real feeling that people are having right at this juncture in history. I think in coming out of a pandemic, that people want meaning in their life. And I think there's a struggle right now that people want to know what their companies stand for, or what the meaning is, or why are they going to work? What is getting them out of bed every day? And they are making choices based upon that. And so I don't think it's not just an intellectual exercise at all. I think it actually is potentially one of the most important things that executives can do today.
Absolutely agreed with you on that one. And I'm glad you brought up the whole matter of what the entire world really has been going through with the pandemic. And I know we're going to delve into that a little bit. But on the matter of companies who have basically identified what their purpose is, could you give us some practical examples of companies who have an established purpose and have pretty much declared that to their team and maybe communicated it externally as well?
Yeah. So there's a couple ways to look at this. There's external brand purpose, and there's also internal purpose. And sometimes companies kind of make that one and the same, and sometimes they don't. So sometimes I'll give you some examples. Many people are aware of Nordstrom's internal purpose is giving people what they're looking for no matter what. I think people feel that. We've all heard stories of people bringing in shoes that are like 20 years old and they still take them. Which is just mind-boggling that they do that.
Yeah.
Now, through time, Nordstrom has evolved and their brand has evolved from a marketing perspective. They're much more about the environment and some other things from an external brand perspective. They're still primarily about the customer, but their external brand has gone through evolutions. But internally, the main purpose that they have internally, it's about the customer and it's about giving that customer whatever they want, no matter what. Let's say that the executive team is sitting down and hopefully there's marketing representation at that table, but they answer the big important why question. Why are we here? Because it's important that executive team have alignment at that table, whether it's a small company, a big company, it doesn't matter. And that in some senses can be shared throughout the organization. That could be the internal purpose. Now, you can also take that internal purpose of why they're here, and I'll use Southwest's original brand purpose, for instance, which was to democratize travel. They knew that grandma and grandpa didn't always have a chance to get on a plane and travel because the cost of flying originally was just too high. Now, did Southwest go out and tell the world that their brand purpose was to democratize travel? No. But internally, that's what everybody knew. We're going to democratize travel. Now, they had different brand messaging that went out externally, and they also shared that with employees. Now, their brand messaging and even their internal purpose has gone through evolution since. And you can see it on their site, and they've included their differentiators and their purpose, etc. And there's articles written about it. You can go check it out. But I use that as a good example of one camp, which is there can be an internal purpose, but then there's also an external brand purpose. And as long as employees really understand that there is purpose behind what the company is doing, that's what's most important.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you started to raise the point about the difference between the internal purpose that's shared with employees versus the brand purpose. And probably versus is not even the right word, because really one should feed into the other.
Inform the other. Absolutely. Yeah. Because that internal purpose, the brand purpose, also you have brand research, target audiences, other things that are informing that. The internal why of a company is really just what gets us out of bed in the morning. But the external brand purpose, it has marketing with it. And it's a little bit more, we're thinking about what the public, what they need to hear. And maybe it has more of those strategic anchors associated, the differentiators included in it. So
absolutely. It kind of smacks similar to an example for the company that I work for. So I'm the CMO of a financial group called JMMB. And our purpose, as we've defined it internally, is to cause our customers to experience love and to realize the inherent greatness that's within them. That's our internal purpose.
I love that.
And that's why we were founded, and that's what drives us every day as a team. It's love that's the motivation. But we don't tell our customers we love you necessarily.
I understand.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But for our customers, our corporate tagline that we use externally is your best interest at heart, meaning everything that we do is with your best interest in mind. And that's what they need to hear, because as a financial institution, lots of stories that banks are really just in this thing to squeeze every dollar out of my pocket. Banks really have, unfortunately, some banks have built a very negative reputation for themselves as being very self-serving or self-seeking. So if we are motivated by love, then our clients need to know that what's really driving and at the heart of our operations, every decision, the products we offer, is their best interest. So you see the connection, one feeding into the other, even though they're not necessarily vocalizing the same thing.
Excellent. That's the perfect example. Yep.
Absolutely. So you mentioned earlier about the pandemic, and I mean, wow, what a roller coaster. Because I think the whole matter of the pandemic really caused us to stare our humanity in the face, not just as individuals, but as companies. And people started to expect more from companies in the face of what was really an international disaster of no mean order, both on the human front in terms of life, but also on the economic and financial front as well. And now that we're coming out of it, knock wood, some countries faster than others, but now that we're coming out of it, I mean, what's the importance of ensuring that your purpose as a company is adequately defined as a result of this pandemic, both from the standpoint of employees and from the standpoint of your customers as well?
More important than ever, and we discussed this earlier, the timing around purpose and sharing that purpose with employees and helping them to feel inspired is not only important just because it's the right thing to do, but it's good business sense right now. And I don't know if everyone has read about the Great Resignation, but it's been circulating. There are some pundits that feel like it's overhyped, others that don't feel like it's overhyped. But regardless, we do know that more and more companies are having difficulty hiring, and that more and more individuals have taken time to do some reflection during this period of the pandemic to ask themselves, is what I'm doing right now what I want to be doing? And some of that has to do with having worked at home and then going back. But regardless, there are more questions about who I'm working for, how I've been treated, what the company stands for, etc. Having that humanity, as you talked about, is going to be something that people really consider. But even before the pandemic, I think some of this was in motion. In 2017, Salesforce, I believe it was, did a study, and I believe it was 80% of business people professionals believed that businesses had a responsibility beyond profit to be doing something that had a positive impact on society. And I would say that's 2017. And you go through the pandemic, and now you're thinking people are questioning this even more. I think it's only heightened. And internal marketers now are making sure that people are hearing that purpose. So it's one thing for them to have it, but now they have to know it and really be able to understand what it is that the company is standing for and if they're doing things about it.
Absolutely. Tangent that study that was done by Salesforce, customers are also demanding that businesses declare what their purpose is, because customers are now using their wallets to choose to support companies based on the purpose that they're living out and whether they're actually living it out at all. All right, great. So I know the next obvious question that a lot of our listeners may be having is, well, how does a company live that out exactly? So we've sat down, we've defined it, we know why we get up in the morning, what motivates us. But how do we know we're actually living it out? I mean, what determines whether we are successfully doing that or not?
Yeah, well, that's an important question. And what's really interesting about that, it can't be just another thing that gathers dust. A purpose statements really at their heart should be a filter for decision making. And that is how you know that you are living it out. So if it's not being used to make decisions about how business is being done and conducted, then you're not living it out. So it should determine everything from the strategic decisions that are being made to the priorities that you're doing, along with what those strategic anchors kind of even are, who you partner with, and how you as a company end up living that out from all along the way. It should be that true north. And that's what makes it really exciting, I believe.
I love that, because what you've basically highlighted is that we have to make sure all the dots are connected back to that purpose. So what products are we going to offer? What fees are we going to charge? The pricing strategy, the operational procedures or HR policies, everything has to tie back to that purpose, kind of like the pillar that everything feeds out of. And if there's anything that's not lining up, then that's what we need to address.
You got it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
All righty. Well, that being said, then, going back to, again, the whole concept of internal marketing, and I said it at the top of the show that the objective of internal marketing is ultimately to engage our employees, ensuring that they are aligned with the mission and vision, where ultimately, of course, to empower them to become advocates of the brand. But based on our conversation so far, I suspect I'm picking up that's just not sufficient. It doesn't go deep enough because we are talking about purpose. Why do you have that view that engaging employees in just purely the mission and the vision isn't enough?
It's an excellent question. And one of the best, and I don't take credit for it, goes back to emotion. It really kind of goes back to what is actually going to inspire employees the most, because that's really what we want to do. We want to conjure up emotion and feelings and ultimately loyalty. And we want them to be not only brand advocates, but we want them to feel inspired that they're making a meaningful choice to come to work every day. I mean, ultimately, we want joy at work.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, same here.
And I think that's possible. And even Simon Sinek, if you kind of go back to that famous TED Talk that he did when he talked about the golden circle, but he talks about the why is in the middle, and then how, and then what. And that why in the middle is purpose, really. And so when we talk about what we're communicating to employees about, he talks a lot about what is effective communication. And in that famous TED Talk, he shares that the most inspiring companies are those that are sharing purpose outward, that they start with the why of the company. So if you think about that from an internal marketing perspective, if we're really wanting to engage employees and actually change behaviors, this isn't manipulative. This is just like really wanting to inspire them. We've got to get to their feelings, and their feelings are going to be more inspired by purpose than anything else.
I think that's really powerful. And again, it goes back to, again, one of the key tenets of what's going to make your internal marketing strategy successful is that emotional connection. So it's not just about that head knowledge of, okay, this is why we exist and I can recite it and I can say it. But if you're not emotionally connected to that yourself on a very personal level, then it's not going to work. It's probably not even the company that you should be working for, quite frankly. And even if you do choose to work for them, if you're not connected to that, then it's not going to come off as authentic when you talk about it. Customer engagement, customer experience design, the customer is going to pick up that lack of authenticity. Deborah, so having said that, how practically can companies now start to engage and reinforce all of what we say our purpose is? What does that look like? What can companies do to get that actualized on their teams?
This is where it gets fun.
Yeah,
So
it certainly does.
I think this is where the creativity and the beauty of all of the talents of everyone listening, you really get to come to life. So it somewhat depends on where the company is in the journey, but there's just so many exciting opportunities. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have internal marketing, have important leadership today. Because we know from an organizational health perspective, I can tell you that the third discipline of organizational health is over-communication, according to Lencioni. And over-communicating is something that I will tell you that most organizations don't do well enough. And I think a lot of it is not because internal communications is not willing to do it, but sometimes it's because people are just not aware of how much repetition is required. Practically, whether it's reinforcing in all staff meetings, onboarding, and email communications, whether you do camps and take every employee through those camps. Every employee, whether they're frontline staff or they're back office and working in finance or human resources, making sure that they understand how their role connects to that purpose is very important, and that they verbalize it in small groups and that they really get an understanding. That you video some of your employees talking about purpose and what it means to them, and that you showcase those videos on your intranet or on your even website and showcase the power of it, that you get testimonials. Also, as we talk about purpose, we really want that partnership also with HR, because really you want there to be a meaning in terms of your purpose. And as you identify core values, we really want more meaningful core values. But in terms of purpose, there are so many different ways that you can help honor, whether it's giving awards for people that are living out that purpose in your core values, putting up imagery, regularly reinforcing it as you see it happening. When decisions are made that are reflective of that purpose, having the CEO or the head of marketing sharing that out in newsletters. And every time transitions are happening, change is happening, quarters are ending, having that be reinforced. It cannot be emphasized enough how much it needs to be central. And it will not get old. It should not get old.
What's your view, just as a quick sidebar question to that, what's your view on doing things to incentivize behavior? I mean, do you see a role in that? Is something that you recommend or encourage, yay or nay? Because I guess some people may be thinking it's great that we keep telling them we're forcing it, communicate, as you say, over communicate. Is there a way to put things in place, whether it is in the target setting process, performance appraisal systems, that sort of thing, that is meant to incentivize a certain kind of behavior that you want team members to adhere to or not? Or really, should we just rely on it coming off as more naturally a part of who they are in terms of their way of being?
So I'm going to bridge a little bit and talk a little bit about core values in combination with the purpose, because I think that when you're talking about the behaviors, you're really talking a little bit about the core values that are associated with living out the purpose. I don't see that being necessarily what I would recommend per se, because I feel like it is true and intrinsic to how you would hire, how you would fire, how you would institutionalize within your human systems who you want at that organization. So to me, discipline number 4 in organizational health is kind of reinforcing your clarity. And so once you know that core clarity of how do you behave within an organization, it's not behaviors that you're trying to incentivize, it's who you have at your organization. And so this should be naturally who you have at your organization. And if people aren't acting in those 3 core value types of way, you really probably, they shouldn't be there. And it should be that clear. If I end up hiring someone, that's who I would, hire. But different companies are going to have different values, and whatever works for them. If someone has big-hearted, or if someone has humble, or if someone has a different value and they're seeing that someone's not acting in accordance with, that's a red flag. And this isn't about, go start chopping block, but it is about, if you're going to live out that purpose, then that's how you're going to live out that purpose. And it's important to be able to see that.
I think sometimes when we now talk about purpose and what that is and assessing whether or not we're being true and living out our purpose, there may be the temptation that some company leaders may have to put things in place that kind of nudge a particular behavior to ensure that we're hitting it. And I think it's just a natural part, again, of doing business, the whole measurement, goal setting, that sort of thing, smart setting of goals. But I really appreciate the fact that you've highlighted the point that when it comes down to that emotional connection to the company's purpose that you want your team members to have, If they themselves don't believe in it or they're not there, there's no incentive that's going to bring that out authentically at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's either there or it's not, I would say.
Yeah. Thank you. So we've spoken about how do I actualize my purpose, living out my purpose as a company. There's some of us as companies who may be on that journey already, or we're probably just starting out. But I'm sure once we're on that journey, we probably want to know what are some of the red flags that we need to look out for as company leaders to make sure that we're doing what we say we want to do.
I think that's a great question to ask. And I would say that discipline number 2 in organizational health is a really great place to start. To just ask yourself how much clarity is there on the executive team, but then also, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the questions that go along with clarity because I think they come out of purpose, but also I think some other red flags are turnover, which could be, there are other reasons for turnover. I'm not going to say that all of them are to do with purpose. Obviously, there are lots of extenuating circumstances for that. But I also think if purpose is not guiding decision-making, that's a big red flag. So if you happen to be part of executive decision-making and you're seeing that is not, if the clarity is not helping to guide or it's not inspiring some of that decision making, that's a red flag.
Yes, completely understood. Deborah, this has been such an awesome conversation. I think we could be here talking about purpose for another 2 hours. But given all that has been shared, if you were to look back and say to our audience, what's the biggest sort of a nugget, as I like to say, that you'd want our listeners to come away with? What would that be?
I would just say that you're needed right now more than ever before. I think if you can recognize that, just how important internal marketing is right now, I don't think there's ever been a more important time in history for internal marketing. And there is a way to partner with, if it's the CMO, however, the head of marketing can partner with that CEO. It is a vital relationship. And if you can impart or get across how important that employee engagement and getting across the importance of internal marketing right now, I think you'll have an open ear, because I do think that CEOs are well aware of all of the changes. They have a lot of pressure right now, and you're vital. And so to take the experience that you have, the lessons that you have learned, and to impart that inspiration to employees, there's never been a more important time to help employees feel engaged. They need to feel seen by their manager, but they also need to feel connected to something greater than themselves. And that's where purpose comes in. And that's, I think, really where internal marketing can play an important role.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Deborah. I'm so very grateful for your time and your expertise today. It's been a wonderful discussion, no doubt about that. And as I always like to cap all of my episodes, I ask all of my awesome guests, how can we, the Internal Marketing Tribe, support you?
Oh, well, it has, first of all, just been a privilege. I am such a fan of yours and all that you do for so many. I would just love to connect with any of your listeners. Probably the easiest way is LinkedIn. You can reach me at Deborah Mersino, Mersino. And the other thing is, if you happen to know any leader of a nonprofit, not-for-profit, B Corp, or socially responsible company that you believe might benefit from organizational health, leader, I'd love to connect. It can be a big, small, but that's what I do. And I'd love to elevate good in the world. I'd love an introduction.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. And yes, Deborah is quite active on LinkedIn. Actually, that's how I found you on LinkedIn. So what we'll do is we'll include a link to your LinkedIn profile, your company website in the show notes, so folks can click and connect with you right there very easily. And Deborah, thank you again so much for joining me for this conversation. It's been really very enlightening, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners were able to get some wonderful takeaways that they can apply relatively easily and immediately, I would say, to their own situations. And I encourage everybody to reach out and connect with Deborah.
And that's it for today's episode. I hope that you've gotten some valuable takeaways from today's discussion. And if you found it valuable, then please, I invite you as always to share it with someone who you believe will find it valuable as well. If you're not already subscribed to the Internal Marketing Podcast, please join the family. The podcast is available on your favorite podcasting app. Thank you again for listening. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I look forward to your joining me next time.